going to transition really well right into Roy, who's going to talk about how to do migrations and move sites around from one host to another, from your local environment up to a different host, or from one domain to another. All right, so the first question I can say is, will you tell me who I should host with? No, I will not. Yes, so, oh, sorry, I need to get it. There you go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you how to find the right host for you, rather than just tell you who you should host with. Because if we went around this room right now, and even if you asked all the organizers, we'd all give you a different person to host with. The reason is there's a lot of really great hosts out there. There's not just one that reigns supreme over any of the other ones. So what we're going to talk about is how you can find and identify what's the right host for your business or your personal website. And that's what I'm going to kind of talk to you guys about tonight.
Sorry.
So there's many different types of hosting. You've got shared, you've got dedicated, you've got VPS, you've got cloud hosting, and then you've got WordPress managed hosting. So a lot of these, many don't fully understand the difference between the different ones. So we're going to kind of just run through and kind of explain them without getting very technical. So with shared hosting, what you have is you usually have one server. It's usually a really beefy server. This is your typical, you'll see GoDaddy, Bluehost, a lot of these different ones have this type of setup. SiteGround has this, where you have one really powerful server hosting a ton of websites. This could be up in the thousands. And one thing with doing this with a lot of shared hosts is a good shared host will only sell you what you need. Some shared hosts will oversell the server, and what that means is they're going to sell more websites than that server really can handle, under hopes that not every website's going to have people accessing it at a certain time, and that's what overselling is. So with these, what you're doing is you're sharing all the resources of that server. It means you're sharing the processor, the RAM, everything that's in that server that runs your website, processes your website, will all be running directly from one set of resources. So if one of the sites on a shared host jumps in and starts really utilizing a lot of those resources, it's going to slow every other site down on that host. Now, some hosts have put some measures in place to kind of stop that, but that is a possibility with shared hosts because you are sharing all of those resources. So dedicated hosting is a similar type of setup, except they only put one website on that host. Usually with this, it's a dedicated box, meaning they give you the box, they give you the server. You can do whatever you want with it. You can put one website on there, or you can open up your own hosting company and put 1,000 websites on there. Obviously, you do that, it's going to start to slow down because you're now running the same problem you ran into with the shared host. So dedicated hosting for the longest time was the way to go if you wanted to have fast, reliable hosting without being slowed down. You would get a dedicated server. So then what happened was many people, dedicated servers were expensive. It was one computer for one big old server for just one website. So what they did is they started splitting these servers down. So then you had VPS, which is virtual private server. And what you've got is you've got your one server, and it's partitioned down into where it's really running multiple servers on that one server. So now you've got 4 different servers. They usually don't overload these. You usually have about 4 to 8. Some can hold a little bit more. But then each of those are set up as their own environment, which then kind of treats it as a dedicated host. It's similar to dedicated hosting, but it's a cheaper option. And usually the resources are a lot more limited, but your resources are dedicated to you. So if that server, say, has 10 gigabytes of RAM and it's got 2 virtual hosts running on there, each one will get to 5 gigabytes. And then you have cloud hosting. So this is what you're seeing a lot of now. So cloud hosting is just a whole bank of servers, and then it hosts your site. So what this does is this allows them to have all these different servers running, and then all the websites are running off there, and the resources can be scaled up or scaled down. So they set up a certain amount of resources that you're going to have access to on the setup. And with the setup, you'll have all these resources you'll have access to will be dedicated to you, and they will scale up or scale down the amount of servers they need to make that happen for you. So what this does is this keeps your server or keeps your site stable, and allows it to continue to run as long as you are within the parameters of what they're giving you. So if your site is having a huge traffic spike with a cloud-based server, your site will only stay within that container that it's allowed to hit, and then it'll stop. Now, with many cloud hosting services, they also allow you to easily ramp up or ramp down. So if you need to add more resources because you're getting hit hard, you just got, you put out a video and went viral, and now all of a sudden you've got tons of hits coming to your website, you can easily, with these, usually scale up. Different hosts have different ways that you scale up, but usually it's just, you can log in, hit a button, and it scales up, and it charges by the hour usually for usage. So you can scale up to where you got 3 times as many resources, and then when it dies back down, you die back down. And some even actually offer the ability to auto scale based off of that. So they'll sense when your website's getting hit really hard, and then they'll scale up and then scale back down once the traffic kind of dies out. And then you got WordPress managed hosting. Most of you guys here, this is what you're going to be interested in. So with WordPress managed hosting, it usually runs in a cloud-based type of environment. You've got the big ones out there. You've got SiteGround, you've got WP Engine, Pagely, Flywheel, Pressable. You've heard all these names. Some of these are sponsors of this meetup group. And these guys specialize just in WordPress hosting. And what does that mean? So WordPress is a very interesting app. If you just let it run the way it is, it uses a lot of resources because it's calling back to the database. It's building out each page for every user who comes to your website. Now, a few weeks ago, we talked about optimizing your site and using caching. Well, what a lot of these plugins do is they offer that caching service to you. So they don't use, most of them don't use or even allow you to use other caching plugins because they have it built into their server infrastructure. So they have caching layers already built in, and they've got a server that's specialized and built just to run WordPress in general. And they've optimized every piece of that server to only run WordPress. A couple of them do run, a couple of them are also optimized to run Joomla or Drupal, but most of these have a special setup just for WordPress. The other thing with them is they also are just like your cloud hosting. Many of them allow you to be scaled up. They offer other unique options, such as be on the one-click staging environments and different things which we're going to dive into right now. So what do you want to look at when you're choosing your host? First thing, let's kind of talk about support. The support is one of the biggest things that you're going to find. You don't want to have to use it, but you're going to use it at one point, and you want that support to be top-notch. I've had this with multiple hosts. When a host is running great, you don't even think about your host because your website's up, it's running, and I'm not even thinking about it. But as soon as that site goes down, something happens, or something's not working correctly, and it's something that you don't have the power to control or reconfigure, and you have to reach out and work with that host, that's when you're going to realize really quick how great the support is or how horrible the support is. So the biggest thing is, does support work when you work? And what I mean by that is not all of these companies are 24/7 support. And you would think in today that everybody would have 24/7 support. Many of them have or some of them will have where they have business hours they're available, and then they have emergency hours. So if your site's down, you can contact them with an emergency ticket. But if you're just trying to ask a question, they're going to wait until business hours to answer you. Now, some will say, well, that's no big deal because, you know, I'm at home watching TV, sleeping when it's off hours. But if you're running a site where you're running it in the evenings, or you're doing work in the evenings, you're running your business in the evenings. Well, I'm going to silence my phone. There you go. And you're working in the evenings or whatnot. What you want to do is you're going to find when that support is not available, it's going to be really, really annoying. I had this happen recently with one of the hosts I was using. It was a Friday afternoon. I was trying to finish up a last-minute project for a client, and because of the way the caching was set up on that managed host, one was unable to set up cookies and pull cookies for something I set up, for a script I set up, and reached out to the host. The host verified that the setup does not allow it. This is Friday afternoon right before, and it's one little piece that needed done so I could go home. Reached out to host, told them, hey, I need this to work on these pages. They sent back, they replied back to me, went back and forth, and then all of a sudden they stopped replying to me at the last minute when all they had to do was turn it on. Monday morning, finally they replied back to me and said, sorry, we went home for the weekend. We're back now. We turned it on for you. So I had to wait all weekend just to get this one little thing turned on. And once I turned it on, 5 minutes later, I had the script up and running for the client. So it can get very annoying when working with a support department that does not work 24/7. So look into that. Look at what you're working. If you're the kind of person that only works 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, you might not need to worry about that. But if you're going to be doing regular work in the evenings or during the weekends, you do want to make sure that you have somebody you can reach out to. How do you reach them is another big thing. So a lot of companies have a phone support line, and they also have a live chat, and they also have a email support system. What you want to find out is, how do you reach the person who's actually doing the work on the server? How do you actually reach the engineers? What's going to happen is, with a lot of them, is they have somebody who's answering the phones, and all they're doing is they're logging a ticket for you, and they have no idea what's going on. They probably couldn't even use an FTP client if they tried. They don't know they don't know anything about servers. They just know how to log ticket support requests for you and read back to you whatever the engineers posted in there. So this is where it's great when you have to find out, who are you actually talking with when you're filling out these support tickets? Are the engineers actually the ones that are replying and working with you? Or are you talking to a rep who's then relaying the information back and forth? Because in some of those cases, there could be stuff that's lost in translation. If you kind of understand what's going on, it can get really frustrating. I luckily had this where recently with actually that same post I was talking about, that I was talking to the support rep, and I asked, can you just let me talk to an engineer? So they put one of the engineers on the phone, and I was able to tell them exactly what was the issue, and he was able to say, oh, that's an easy fix, and he changed a few settings around, and 5 minutes later we were up and running, and everything worked great. So sometimes if you know what you're doing, it can get frustrating if you're dealing with somebody who doesn't always understand what's going on. So just trying to find out what that chain is. Most phone supports, you're normally not going to ever get directly to the engineer, but you want to find out if there is a process that you could get to one if you needed to in a dire situation, or if something is really messed up and you need somebody a little more advanced to help you. Find out how much they'll do for you as well. So one of the great things about having a web host is they're that extension for when something does go wrong. Sure, you can sit here and try to fix something crazy that broke on the site, but a lot of these hosts, a lot of the managed WordPress hosts, have WordPress experts that have dealt with this, and they know exactly what file or what permissions need to be changed or anything like that. While it's something you could fix yourself, they also have people who are ready to go, who'll jump in there and fix things really quick. I've had this where, you know, I'm out and about, and I see something's gone wrong. I just pick up the phone, make a phone call. You get a hold of somebody real quick, they jump in, they make the fix for you, and you're back to doing what you'd rather be doing. Rather than sitting here trying to support and fix everything and try to figure out what's going on, you can let them just jump in and make those fixes. So just find out how much and how far they're willing to go. Different levels and different services, they'll do different things. Some will just say, sorry, your website's hosted here. Others will jump in and say, oh, we know what that issue is. For example, your site gets hacked. Some of your hosts will actually go in and they will clean out the hack and get everything back up and running for you, while others will say, go contact security or fix it yourself. And they'll tell you that that's not something they cover. So you want to find out, what will they do and how much stuff will they, how far will they go to help you get back up and running when you need to. So what about all the different features? So first, you're going to see when you go to a web host, they list tons of different things they do. They like to brag about all this different stuff, but there's only a few things that really make a huge difference when you're hosting a WordPress site. First off, you want to look for somebody who has solid-state drives. Solid-state drives are about 10 times faster than a standard hard drive. So if they do not have solid-state drives, you want to be very careful with that. just because there's a lot of processing when pieces are not cached or not on a CDN and they're actually have to process. It's great to be able to have that faster read-write speed that solid-state drives have. They do cost more than standard hard drives, but most of the hosts are starting to move towards solid-state. One-click staging. So this is amazing. This is the way you stop cowboy coding. If you got to apply updates or do anything, what this is where you can literally click one button inside the control panel. It'll take your whole site, copy it over to a different URL, usually staging dot whatever your URL is .com, and then you can go in, apply all your updates, do any code changes, add any new plugins you want, do everything you want, test your whole site, make sure everything still works. Click one button, and it all migrates right back up there. So this is something that most of the WordPress hosts do have, but you want to go ahead and check that out and make sure that if you're going to go with a WordPress host, that they have this feature there, because it's going to make your life a whole lot easier. Roy's going to talk a little bit how to do that process manually if your host does not currently have that. But this is an option that does save you a ton of time. And it is good to know. Roy's going to tell you kind of what's going on when that's happening, because it's something you do want to kind of understand what exactly is going on in that process. Because if something happens while it's going on, you want to know how to fix it after that's happened. But it's a great way. This is the only way that I'll ever run any kind of updates for any kind of server, just because a plugin update, sometimes plugins will rewrite their entire code base. I had this happen recently with one client who went in, updated, it was just a testimonials plugin. Updated testimonials plugin, and half his site broke. Went in and took a look. The first thing I saw, he went from 2.0 to 3.0, and it said right inside the changelog that they rewrote basically the entire plugin. Every last piece of the plugin was rewritten. And sure enough, that upgrade, he had custom built other widgets that were custom built that connected into that plugin that coder or that plugin developer changed completely, so all of those broke and did not work. So if he would have done that on staging, would have noticed that what happened on the live site. With him, we easily just rolled back a backup and went back to a previous state where everything worked, and then fixed the issues, and then updated the plugin over on a staging environment, so it was nice and safe. Backups are super important. Before you do anything with your site, you want to always have a backup. But in case you do happen to go and you click update, or a plugin gets updated, something breaks on your website, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to be able to roll back really quick to a previous backup that hopefully is within the last 24 hours. Most people don't have a huge amount of changes that happen every 24 hours on their site. So being able to roll back only 24 hours versus rolling back a week or a month can be a pretty nasty process. And the other thing is you want to be able to do it yourself. So there are a lot of hosts keep backups of all the server, but you have all other servers, but you have to call in, and some of them will even charge you to restore that backup. With a good host, you'll be able to log in and see all of your backups, and you'll be able to restore those backups. Some of these hosts even have easy, SiteGround has a great way with their backups that you can actually go through and you can see all the file structure of that backup and restore individual files from different backups at different times, which is really great when you don't want to restore everything. You just know, hey, I know this is what I broke. I just need to restore this. For example, in the one case that we're talking about with the one client, we restored just that plugin folder, which was what caused us to roll back his plugin to a previous version just by restoring just that folder. But the backups kind of just go on that. You do have plugins and all that can do that, but it's great to be done at a host level. It's an extra level of security, and it's going to be your best bet for saving those backups and keeping those backups. And but the biggest thing I have always found is very frustrating trying to get a hold of support and getting them to restore the backup. Plus, if you don't know when the error happened, you could end up restoring 4 different backups, trying to go back in time to figure out when that is. Support's usually not going to be patient enough to sit with you through 4 different backups and see which one worked. Caching. Cachings are really important when it comes to these WordPress sites. So while you can do the caching with different plugins out there, one of my favorite caching plugins is WP Rocket, but you've got a lot of different caching plugins that are built into these different hosts. SiteGround has one, WP Engine has a special caching layer built, Flywheel, all of them have their own special layer for caching that's done server-side and optimized just for WordPress. So the caching options is something you want to try to find on the host side because it's going to be done the best there than trying to use the plugin, because they've now optimized it for their servers versus when you're using a plugin, you're trying to figure out what exact settings to set for that host and that server. Free migration. So most of these services, when you go to sign up with them, they offer you at least one free migration, and they do an excellent job of this. You provide them all the information they need, and they will go and they will pull your website over, get everything set up, and get you ready to go, usually within hours. And it's 100% free, it's easy to do, so it's something to definitely take a look at and try to find. It makes your job a lot easier than trying to migrate your own stuff. A lot less, their nice thing is they're gonna make sure it works. So if there's a problem, they'll usually troubleshoot and get it fixed, versus if you try to migrate it yourself, you could spend hours trying to troubleshoot and figure out why did this not work, what happened here. Some other cool things to look for. You got PHP 7 or HHVM. So these are different technologies that are going to help your server run a lot faster. PHP 7 is the new version of PHP that's out. You have usually 5.4 to 5.6 running currently on most servers. PHP 7 is a heck of a lot faster. It's almost double, triple the speed for processing. So this is going to help speed up your entire server when you don't have cached pages. Anything that's cached is going to be loading as a static resource, so you're not going to have to worry about those. But whenever something's processing, if you got a shopping cart or anything like that, you're going to want that extra speed for the processing. Nginx and HTTP2, some servers come with that standard. Basically, you have Apache, you have Nginx. It's basically how they serve requests to you. Nginx can serve things in more of a bulk order than Apache goes back and forth for each request. So it allows them to serve things up a lot faster and instantly over to you. And then several of them have security packages. So with security packages, this could be they're monitoring your site for any viruses, all the way up to they will monitor, find the viruses, and clean out your entire installation if you do get hacked. So check out those different packages that they have.
Is that still all in LAMP environment?
Sorry?
Is that still in the LAMP environment, all that? GNINX?
Well, technically not, because LAMP stands for
Yeah, no.
Linux Apache, so it would be using Nginx instead of Apache. So then other ones have CDNs attached to them, and I'm going to talk a little bit about CDNs in just a second. But you do want to, the CDNs are going to definitely help with your speed. So things to watch out for, CDNs. So with the CDNs, they are not always free. You want to look at the details. They'll tell you you get a free CDN, but then they limit how much traffic you can have going through that CDN. Also, some of them will offer you and talk about their free CDN. SiteGround's famous for that. Hey, come with us, you get a free CDN. All they do is they hook you up with Cloudflare, which is free if you just go there yourself anyway. So it's not really that they're hooking you up with a free CDN. It's already there. But the other thing to check out with CDNs is a lot of hosting companies, this is where they make their money as well. They give you a free amount of data that you can use with their CDN. They usually use a service like, for example, Max CDN. Max CDN is one you can go to yourself, pay $9. It's got overage charges if you go over the amount that you need, but you can normally pay anywhere between 3 to 4 cents for extra gigabytes of data that when you do go over and you need extra amounts. The problem with a lot of these companies is they come in, they say, we'll let you use our CDN, we use Max CDN. You're running through their account, and they may only give you 3 terabytes of data or whatnot, and then they come back in and say, okay, anything you go over that, we're going to charge you 10 cents per gigabyte. And they're collecting all that extra revenue because they're actually at such a bulk rate, they're paying, you know, roughly 3 cents per extra gigabyte. So they're getting it at a bulk rate, selling to you at a much higher than you could even go and get half that price going direct to the CDNs yourself. So just make sure that the key with that is just make sure your traffic is, or your bandwidth is in that right spot, so you're not having to pay for a bunch of extra higher price CDN. And if so, make sure with that host you can turn their CDN off, and you can just use your own CDN and just go set up max CDN for yourself and save yourself some money. Cheap prices, a lot of them, this is a sales tactic. They're going to offer you a really low price, $3.95 per month. And you're like, oh, wow, that's an awesome price. Well, what you got to look at with that price is you usually have to pay for an annual subscription, which $3.95, it's not a whole lot. But what you don't realize is that next year and ongoing, that price jumps to almost $12. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you check that out before diving into those and make sure you understand what the price will be. It's the same with if you sign up for, you know, a TV service or anything like that. They're going to offer you that low introductory rate because they know once you're on, it's a little bit harder for you to make that switch because you've got to migrate over and move to somebody else. So they bank on you staying at that higher price. So make sure you understand what that higher price is. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Just make sure you know so that price jump doesn't hurt you when it happens. Unlimited domains. You got to watch out for these sites that say that we're going to give you unlimited domains. A lot of these use cPanel, and what they do is they create these as add-on domains. With add-on domains, they're not actually separated out into a different container. So while they'll look like to anybody come to your site, they can go to www.domain1, domain2, domain3.com, and it looks like total different websites, and you can run multiple WordPress sites inside of there. What ends up happening is they're all running in basically the same container for one website. If one of those sites gets hacked, that hack can go through that whole entire file structure and spread into all of your WordPress installations. So instead of cleaning out one WordPress installation, you're now cleaning out 4 or 5. I've had this happen recently. Somebody who had about 7 of these installed. We had 7 WordPress sites we had to go through and clean everything out because only one of their sites was hacked because it was one site that was out of date that they didn't even know that they still even had on their domain. I'm gonna hold questions to the end, and then we'll jump back on this. So just make sure that if they do offer unlimited domains, most of the hosts that don't have it where they're add-on domains, you're gonna look into those. They're gonna actually limit you on how many you can set up because they are individual containers. So plugins do not always work with all the managed hosts. A lot of times you'll find it's caching plugins. Managed hosts already has caching set up. They don't want you using their plugin for obvious reasons because it could interfere with their caching. Other hosts also disable certain plugins because of security issues or just because they don't work well with their host. So with managed hosts, not all the time, it's not always a bad thing when they're banned. It could just be because it interferes with their configuration. So it doesn't mean there's something actually wrong with the plugin. But there could also be a security reason why they're banning that plugin as well. So just make sure you take a look and find out if all of your plugins will be supported. You can do that usually by just taking a list of what your plugins are, sending it over to the support team and saying, or the sales team and saying, hey, do you support all these plugins? And they'll tell you yes or no. And then free domains. Free domains is something that a lot of them will offer to try and get you to come over and join on. Free domains can be a pain in the butt when you do try to move. It just depends on that host and what their policy is for transferring that domain out from them. Some of them make it very difficult. I've actually had some that we've had to, for clients, fight tooth and nail to get from their previous website hosting company because that free domain they tried to claim was theirs and not their client's. So with the domains, they're cheap. Go buy a domain from GoDaddy or Namecheap and save yourself the hassle of trying to save, I mean, $10 a year when you have to fight to try and get that domain back when you move could be a pain. So just watch out for those free domains. Some of them make it very easy to leave with the domain, but I would always just go register yourself. And then cPanel. cPanel is a common thing you'll find in hosting, and they'll advertise it like it's the best thing ever. But if you're going with a managed WordPress host for WordPress, you don't really need to worry about the control panel. It's not going to be something you're ever playing around in. You're not going to be doing much in there. There's no point really worrying about cPanel. It's just something that's fancy there. And really, I seem to think it actually puts a lot more load on that individual server to run Web Host Manager and cPanel on there. So if they don't have cPanel, that server already is running a lot better because it's not sucking up the resources it needs to run those software. Those are back-end control panels basically for the web hosting environment. So what do you need for your site? First, analytics are your key here. You need to know exactly what your traffic is to figure out what you need when you're looking for a new web host. If you don't even know what your traffic is, it's going to be very difficult to understand what your needs are moving over to a different host. So with different hosts, you have two different methods they limit you by. You have bandwidth is one, and the bandwidth is usually pretty easy to figure out how much you need. You got bandwidth, define it, you just go with your average amount of page views, average page size, multiply it by 30 days, multiply it by a factor of 1.5. What this is basically doing is saying I can get 50% more traffic, so it counts for growth or any kind of type of social media or peak times you're going to hit. And then you can find your page size by going to tools.pingdom.com. At tools.pingdom, you'll be able to see, it'll tell you what your page size is as well as your page speed. It's also kind of fun to look at what your page speed is before and after the move to a new host to make sure that that new host is faster. The other one is based off of monthly traffic. That's the easy one. What's your monthly traffic? And there's your answer of how much you can handle. So you can just pull that usually from Google Analytics. You can pull it from Jetpack as well. All of those will have your analytics inside of them and show you what's going on. So I think the title is wrong on this one. So with the different ones, kind of talking about which host is best for you. So shared hosting, I don't like shared hosting myself, but it can be great if you have a small website, a hobby blog, or something with a lot lower traffic. You don't want to put a really high traffic site on a shared host, and unless that shared host is really good, most of the times they're not going to be able to handle that traffic. Dedicated, I don't really recommend that for much anymore. It's just not really something that I would use. Virtual private server, if you plan to be a cheap reseller, these are really great. So if you want to offer with your services, you want to offer hosting, you can go ahead and pick up different ones. SiteGround's got them. They're called, on SiteGround, I think they're called Cloud VPS, or just cloud computing. And you can go pick those up. And it's got a full-blown reseller. You can go sell out the server and put as many sites on there that can fit. As long as they stay within the resources, you'll be great. The cloud is great for businesses that have a lot of larger traffic because that scalability and being able to scale your website up or down as you need it. And it's also great if you don't have a 100% WordPress site. So if you're hosting other things that are running that are not actually WordPress, you've got your own app or anything like that, cloud hosting is great. And then WordPress is going to be great if your site is 100% WordPress and you're running a business or something along those lines, or even a personal site that you want to put a little bit of extra work into and be able to handle a lot of extra traffic. A WordPress managed host is going to be your best option. So invest in your hosting. And this is something that a lot of people don't do. They try to get hosting as cheap as possible because there are options out there that are $3.95 a month. I think one of them actually goes down to $2.95 a month. You don't want to cheap out on your hosting because this is your front page to your website. This is where people are going to find your business, and this is your storefront. So you want to make sure that people are going to be able to always access your website. Your website's going to load quick, and then for SEO value, you want it to be a fast loading page. So if you cheap out on the web hosting, this can really hurt you. We have this talk with clients all the time because all those different options that I showed, they all have different price points. You have, SiteGround, who runs really cheap. You've got WP Engine, who runs at a much more premium rate. And then you've got even Pantheon, which any client that does not have a budget and is willing to actually invest, that's what we usually put them on, is Pantheon. It's a lot. It's very expensive, but it's it's a full-blown managed platform. It has set up full-blown setup environments. It's very technical. You've got your dev, your test, and you've got your production, and everything's got to be done through Git. It's all version controlled, so it's a lot different. It's a lot harder. So I didn't really put that in here just because of that. I want to talk more about just the basic web hosting out there for what most people are going to be using. But if you've got a business, be willing to invest that extra money and look at those bigger hosts, and don't be afraid as soon as they give you a quote for a price, find out what they're going to be able to do for that price, because a lot of times with a lot of these companies, with that bigger price, they actually have better services and better support, and they're going to run a lot better for you. So be willing to invest that extra money into a host and spend what you need to spend to go ahead and get that traffic or handle that traffic. And then you get a lot of people who go, hey, I'm really smart. I want to go ahead and set my own server on Linode or DigitalOcean. And to that, go ahead. There's no reason why you can't do that. I used to do this myself for my own stuff, and what it really came down to me is it came down to the price of what it cost. I was saving money, and I was saving a few bucks a month, and I was like, hey, look at this, I'm saving a bunch of money. But the amount of time you got to put into setting everything up, managing it, making sure everything is updated, and doing all that, it really comes down to is what is your time worth? And if you're just a business owner trying to run a business, let somebody else do all that work for you for cheap. Why bother doing it yourself? If you're setting up your own web host, then by all means, go with one of these providers and fully set up your whole entire platform, be ready to manage it. As a matter of fact, Flywheel, for example, they use Linode, which is basically a competitor to DigitalOcean. They use Linode for all of their stuff, and they've just got optimized Linode boxes running, I think, Varnish on it. So you could do it. It's just one of those, do you really want to? Is it worth your time to do all that? And a lot of times for a single site, you're saving yourself, maybe by doing it all yourself, you're saving yourself maybe 15 bucks a month off of a managed WordPress host. So why not just pay the extra 15 for somebody else to do all that extra work for you? Somebody you can call when your website goes down and you're out to dinner with your family. You can just call and say, my website's down, get it back online, and then go back to eating, and they'll have it back up and running in just a few minutes, hopefully. And then for me, who do I host with? I host with all of them. I don't have a particular host I stick with because I'm really big about what fits the project. I'm just kind of showing you. I listed out a couple of my clients. So I've got SiteGround VPS that I use right now for my stuff. I'm actually probably moving that over to Flywheel soon myself, but it's just personal preference. There's no major reason. I've got 2 large clients over on Flywheel, 1 really large client over on WP Engine. I have a bunch of small clients over using SiteGround shared accounts, using most of them are using the Go Big or Go Geek plans they have. And really, it just comes down to what works best for your site and your business, and use it. I'm not going to say any of these are better than the others. It really comes down to what's your price point and what's going to work best for your website. So who do I recommend? Again, this depends on what do you need. I'm not going to tell you a single one here. I will say that I did not mention anyone in this presentation that I don't like, and I'm not going to tell you who exactly I don't like, but there are some out there, and you can be able to see reviews about them. You've heard it before. A lot of times it's the really cheap ones out there. Just watch out for what's out there. Just make sure they're what you need for your host or for your business. And then I think that's where we're going to hit questions. Yes.
When you refer to add-on domain, is that the same thing as a subdomain?
It functions similar to the subdomain does in cPanel, but add-on domain is actually it's a whole different domain. So it'd be like domain1.com and domain2.com, versus a subdomain would be, 1.domain.com to .domain.com.
So if I'm making a site on a subdomain, just temporarily, and then posting it on a fresh domain later, is that okay, or is it still vulnerable to attacks?
That's fine. And then actually Roy's gonna cover, I think, are you covering that? How to migrate from like a subdomain over to a regular domain?
The process is very similar.
Yeah. Yeah, so he'll show you how to migrate it over. Yes?
Are there any benefits to using the add-on domain structure?
He said, are there any benefits to using the add-on domain structure?
Cheaper.
It's cheaper, yeah. It's usually with any cPanel based account, it doesn't really, besides the space that it uses up to add a bunch of sites, they don't normally care. It's just could slow down a site if you put 100 of them on there. But it's the whole fact that they're not separated out. They're all within the one account. So everybody has access to all of the different pieces, including those sites themselves can go into the other files of the other sites. Because all it does when you hit create an add-on domain in cPanel is it creates a new folder inside of your main folder for that site. Okay, any other questions?
You lost me there. How does one site get into another site? I mean, someone would physically have to do that.
They just through PHP. What they'll do is they'll just kind of report you through the site. They'll check different directories. So what they can do is they can go up one directory, and that's usually how it gets in. Yeah, there's others here who might know a little bit more how they exactly get into those, but they just seem to, because they're not contained out, they can't access each other's files.
They're all under the same.
Exactly, it's usually
Yes.
So if you have a cPanel account, you have a cPanel account name, every add-on domain is going to be owned by that same user. So if that user gets compromised, every add-on domain has that user.
So the main one, if they get one of the add-on domains, that doesn't mean necessarily they can get to the top level. Oh, no.
They probably will not break out of anything owned to that particular user. So if you have a WordPress account or a cPanel account that gets compromised, it's probably not going to break out of that cPanel account. But yeah, anything within that cPanel
But
account.
if they hacked one of the lower ones, they could.
Yeah, if they know they're good, yeah.
Yeah, it won't, as he said, it won't break out of that actual account itself, but if you have multiple add-on domains, since they're all in that same account, it can move around inside there.
And the problem is, once you start trying to fix one, it just keeps going back and forth. So you're just chasing your tail and you're shut up everything else.
Yeah, you usually want to take it offline and change everything at once.
So you could take several clients down.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Any other questions? All right, so I think we're going to take a short break.
After we pause.